Imagine being locked inside a mechanized Iron Maiden for like 12 consecutive years. Every single day, the machine systematically drains your blood to keep you weak.
Oh man, that's just brutal.
Right. And all while your captors are just bombarding your mind with psychological torment. You're kept alive solely by this biological failsafe inside your own veins. It's this primal mechanism that just refuses to let you die, even when your conscious mind is literally begging for the end.
It's a terrifying scenario. It really forces us to ask what happens when the human mind reaches its absolute terminal limit. Like biology just has to take over to keep the hardware running.
Yeah, exactly. It has to. And welcome to a brand new deep dive. And when I say we are exploring this, I absolutely mean you too. You are the vital third member of this conversation.
Absolutely. We're so glad you're here with us.
Today, our mission is to give you a curated reader's guide and a critical review of a very specific, explosive pivot point in D.P. Kirk's dark fantasy novel, San Vitae, The Awakening.
And we're focusing tightly on chapter 12 today. It's titled Simply Escape.
Yeah, escape. And by the end of this deep dive, you are going to understand exactly why this gritty, post-cataclysmic world of biomagical powers and shifting political factions and deeply tragic romance is just, incredibly gripping.
It really is. It pulls you right in.
We're going to unpack exactly why escape serves as the perfect microcosm of the author's world building. But to really appreciate the massive payoff of this chapter, we need to map out the blood-soaked lore of this universe first.
Right, because San Vitae takes place in this fractured post-cataclysmic world where humanity is split into two vastly different ideological and, well, biological camps.
Okay, lay it out for us.
So on one side, we have the humanities. They view themselves as the purebloods. They're like the last bastion of civilized genetic purity. And they rely entirely on this lethal, highly advanced technology they call divitae.
Wait, let me pause you right there, because the mechanics of divitae are fascinating. It's not just like a fancy word for laser guns.
No, not at all.
The text mentions that the most powerful divitae weapons have these built-in limiters that reject anyone with active magic in their system. How does a piece of technology actually, enforce biological purity?
It works on bioresonance. So the weapons are calibrated to the baseline metabolic frequency of a normal human. Magic in this world actually alters that frequency.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so if someone with magical capability tries to fire a high-level divitae weapon, the tech detects the anomaly in their biological signature and just simply locks them out.
That is a brilliant piece of world building, because the weaponry itself is prejudiced. The humanis have basically engineered their fear of magic directly into their defense systems.
Exactly. It's institutionalized paranoia built into the hardware.
Which sets up a massive contrast with the other side of the conflict, the Santerrie. They're the ones who actually use the magic system, which is called Vitae.
Right, Vitae.
But calling it magic almost feels, I don't know, too sanitized. Because it involves these feral physical transformations, enhanced speed, and these brutal evocations, and it's biologically expensive.
Yeah.
Very expensive.
You don't just wave a wand and summon fire.
Yeah.
You are actively burning your own cellular material.
Yeah, the metabolic cost is staggering. Like, when a normal Santerrie uses Vitae, they are effectively cannibalizing their own life force. It literally causes physical deterioration.
That's horrifying.
It is, but that biological limitation is what keeps the power dynamics of the world somewhat balanced between the tech-heavy humanis and the magic-wielding Santerrie.
Okay, so if the Santerries are already utilizing this visceral cellular blood magic, what makes our protagonist Kurien so different? Because the text refers to him as a Sanite.
Right, a Sanite.
And apparently his own people are so terrified of him that they collaborated with their sworn enemies to lock him in that subterranean Inquisitor's vault I mentioned earlier.
Well, a Sanite is a rare, highly evolved, and just deeply feared mutation within the Santerrie bloodline. Like we said, a normal VT user burns their own cells to create power.
But a Sanite has the instinctual ability to harness what they call the demon aspect of their vitae. This allows them to draw power directly from their surrounding environment.
Oh, so they just bypass the biological cost entirely.
Precisely. It is essentially a thermodynamic cheat code.
Mm-hmm.
Kurien doesn't deteriorate when he uses magic. He pulls energy from the ambient world.
That's insane.
Yeah, so the ruling powers, both the Santerrie Council and the Humanis purists, they look at a being with limitless potential and realize he's a threat to the established order of the entire planet.
Yeah.
So they compromise.
By locking him up jointly. For 12 agonizing years. jointly tortured by Santerrie and Humanist
It's
inquisitors.
the one thing they can agree on.
Yeah. But the physical torture isn't even the worst part of his confinement. He was locked away after being violently separated from the absolute love of his life, Covenness Myasuchi of Rante.
The psychological toll of that is just massive.
Exactly. 12 years of solitary confinement and torture will break anyone's mind, but Kurien's fracture is incredibly specific.
The psychological layering of his imprisonment is so complex. How do you interpret his mental state leading up to the breakout?
Well, think of his brain like a computer server that has just been hit by a catastrophic malware attack. The conscious part of his mind, like the user interface, is completely overloaded by the trauma, so it just freezes.
Okay, I like that analogy.
It locks onto the last safe, beautiful file it had open, which is this vivid, comforting hallucination where he's living a happy domestic life with Myasuchi and their hallucinated son, Han.
He's just totally checked out.
Entirely. He's living inside that frozen screen.
Right.
But the hardware still needs to survive the physical torture of the vault.
Right, and that is where the background processes kick into overdrive.
Yes. The computer reroutes 99% of its processing power to the cooling fans just to keep the motherboard from melting.
Wow.
In Kurien's case, his body surrenders control to the demon aspect, that primal, localized survival instinct of his vitae. So he's existing in two realities at once.
A conscious domestic fantasy and a subconscious violent fight for physical survival.
Exactly.
That mechanism actually mirrors real-world physiological trauma responses, like dissociative fugue states. When the human body is subjected to extreme physical trauma, the autonomic nervous system will literally shunt blood flow away from the extremities to protect the vital organs in the core.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Yeah, it sacrifices the parts to save the whole. Kurien's biology is doing the exact same thing. It's shunting away his consciousness, his empathy, and his humanity to protect his raw physical existence.
And that physiological tipping point is the exact moment. Chapter 12 begins. The pressure cooker finally explodes. The conscious mind has fully retreated. The demon is driving the hardware, and Kurien wakes in the red-lit emergency hallway of the vault.
It's such a striking visual.
It really is. He is completely enveloped in a swirling autonomous shield of what the text calls sanguineous black vitae. He's moving down the corridor like a mechanized force of nature.
Unstoppable.
Yeah, and the Humanis guards are firing these bright blue strobes of Devite energy bolts at him, and they just deflect off his black shield.
The author uses that specific color palette so well to establish the complete futility of his captors. You have the sterile blue tech, the warning red emergency lights, and then this pitch black organic magic that just absorbs everything.
It's so cinematic.
It really is. The visual contrast sets up a highly cinematic encounter that we could call the hunter's folly.
Oh, I am so glad you brought up the Santerrie hunter. Because this highly trained operative steps into the corridor to block Kurien's pass.
Right.
And he draws this massive 6-foot blade swirling with an evoker's violent energy, genuinely believing his years of tactical training are enough to stop a Sanite.
But notice how the text handles the interaction. The hunter postures, He
Yeah.
prepares for a duel. But Kurien doesn't even engage in combat mechanics.
He just growls.
Yes, he simply growls. And a tendril of black vitae slithers from a wound on Kurien's body, travels up the hunter's blade, and instantly erodes the metal all the way down to the hilt.
Leaving this supremely confident operative holding a useless piece of scrap. But what is mechanically happening there? Is the vitae just like a magical rust?
It's much more aggressive than oxidation. Remember, a sanite draws energy from the environment. So the black vitae is acting as an autonomous organism, molecularly deconstructing the sword to feed itself and protect the host.
Oh, so it's eating the weapon.
Basically, yeah. It breaks down the weapon at a subatomic level. It perfectly illustrates the terrifying gap in power between disciplined training and unrestrained biological necessity.
And the autonomy of the vitae really takes center stage moments later. It slithers away from Kurien, crawls toward the massive vault door, and casually consumes the giant metal rods barring it shut.
It's wild.
Kurien's magic is literally eating the prison. But amid all this god-tier molecular destruction, the author drops an incredibly jarring detail.
Oh, right, the woman.
Yeah. Kurien is cradling an unconscious woman in his arms who we later learn is a fellow Sanite named Sharina, yet when he speaks to the impaled hunter, he issues this world-ending threat.
What does he say again?
He says, "Heed me, hunter. Should I find them harmed in any way, not a single soul anywhere will be spared my wrath." He's threatening the world to protect people who aren't even physically in the vault with him.
That's because his physical body is escaping the vault, but his conscious mind is still trapped in the hallucination. He thinks the woman in his arms is Myasuchi.
Oh, man. That is so sad.
It is. He believes he's fighting to protect his hallucinated son, Han. He's issuing a terrifying threat to the real guards, but he's doing it to protect a fantasy family that exists solely in his shattered psyche.
Wow.
Yeah, he's got a war physically, but mentally he's desperately, tragically vulnerable.
That overlap of realities is where the writing elevates from just a cool action scene to something masterful. Because while his body is melting the vault door, his mind flashes to a chaotic, imagined battlefield above the city of Rouen.
Right, the hallucination deepens.
Yeah, he envisions Myasuchi in the rubble, protecting Han. Someone tells her she's needed topside, and she fiercely replies, "I'm needed here."
It's a poignant projection of Kurien's own subconscious desires. He desperately wants Myasuchi to choose him, to choose their family, over her political duties as a Covenness.
Which is heartbreaking.
It really is.
Yeah.
But within that hallucination, the narrative introduces the voice of the demon aspect.
Okay, wait. Let's push back on the traditional fantasy trope of a demon for a second. Because when listeners hear the word, they might picture a literal entity with horns from a hell dimension whispering evil thoughts.
Right, like a literal devil on the shoulder.
Exactly. But in the world of San Vitae, the demon isn't a separate malicious spirit. It feels entirely biological.
Yes, it is an internal biological imperative pushed to a supernatural extreme.
Right. It's an evolutionary failsafe. When your conscious mind undergoes so much torture that it wants to completely shut down and die, this internal demon protocol kicks in to keep your heart beating.
Exactly.
But the cost is staggering. It demands your humanity as payment. It strips away your empathy so your body can survive the unimaginable.
And that biological imperative has a very specific philosophy. In the hallucination, the demon hovers over Myasuchi and taunts her.
Oh, that scene gave me chills.
Right. It says fear, hate, pain, desire, love. You will need them all to move beyond mere existence, to live. If you want to understand the core themes of San Vitae, that quote is the thesis of the entire book.
It's the weaponization of trauma.
Exactly that. The author argues through the demon that survival in a broken world requires you to cannibalize your own emotions. You cannot survive purely on noble ideals.
You have to use the pain.
You must harness your pain, your hatred, and even your love and turn them into a weapon. The demon isn't demanding evil. It's demanding raw, unfiltered survival at the absolute cost of civilized restraint.
Which makes the conclusion of Chapter 12 such a powerful transition for the narrative. The pressure cooker has exploded.
Definitely.
We've moved through chapters of agonizing flashbacks, dense political intrigue regarding the Humanes and Santerrie, and the claustrophobic horror of the Inquisitor's vault. And now the vault door is gone.
The pacing here is critical. Escape successfully pivots the entire structure of the novel. It moves the story from a locked-room psychological thriller into a sprawling, post-apocalyptic wasteland survival epic.
And it anchors that pivot with an incredibly haunting final image. Kurien physically crosses the threshold. He steps out of the vault and into the wasteland for the first time in 12 years.
It's a huge moment.
It is. And right at that boundary, his fractured mind realizes that he cannot take the hallucination with him. If he's going to survive the harsh reality of the wastes, he has to leave his comfortable 12-year dream behind.
He has to wake up.
Yeah. As he steps out into the ruins, the hallucination collapses. He simply hears Myasuchi's voice call his name Kurien. And then he wakes up in the real world, holding a strange woman, surrounded by rubble, covered in blood.
It's a rebirth, but a deeply traumatic one. He is born back into the real world, stripped of all his comforting illusions. The reality of the post-cataclysmic world hits him all at once.
So, if you are listening to this and wondering if Sanity, The Awakening should be added to your reading list, the verdict is a resounding yes. First, the magic system alone is worth the price of admission.
Oh, absolutely.
Vitae feels incredibly dangerous because it is grounded in that severe physical cost we discussed. Every magical encounter feels like a high-stakes gamble with your own biology.
Furthermore, the moral ambiguity is just brilliantly executed. The Humanes present themselves as pure, civilized, and refined. Yet they are the faction operating sadistic subterranean torture vaults, employing mechanized iron maidens and psychological torment.
Right, the supposed good guys.
Exactly. Conversely, the Sanites, who are branded as abominations and feral monsters by society, they possess a deep, tragic vulnerability and fierce protective loyalty. The text constantly forces the reader to reevaluate who the actual monsters are.
It perfectly balances high-octane, visceral, dark fantasy action with deeply emotional, character-driven trauma. The romance between Kurien and Myasuchi isn't a fairy tale.
Far from it.
It is a desperate, forbidden connection that literally breaks their minds when they are torn apart. Chapter 12 is a masterclass in writing a protagonist who is simultaneously an unstoppable, terrifying god of war and a profoundly vulnerable man just trying to navigate his own shattered mind to find his way back to the woman he loves.
It really highlights the extreme lengths to which biology will go to preserve life, even when the mind is ready to surrender. We've spent this entire discussion focusing on the demon aspect as an individual biological defense mechanism,
Right, Curien's personal failsafe against unbearable trauma.
the ultimate individual survival instinct. But that raises a much broader, deeply unsettling question about the world building, and something for you to consider long after this deep dive ends.
Oh, I like where this is going.
We know the cataclysm that broke this world inflicted unimaginable trauma on the entire human race. If an individual like Kurien develops a demon aspect that strips away his empathy just to survive a torture vault, does a society develop a collective demon aspect to survive an apocalypse?
Wow.
When you look at the Humanists, a faction that claims to be the pinnacle of civilization, while systematically locking people in Iron Maidens out of pure survivalist fear, are they truly the enlightened purebloods? Or are the brutal, empathy-starved humanists actually just humanity's collective demon aspect, desperately steering the hardware of civilization long after its soul is checked out?